Hey, yours truly, the Fonz here. Incredible. That's the only word to describe what's happening to me and the Happy Days gang today. So you stick around. You get my drift.
Remember when Saturday mornings weren't just about cartoon mascots and sugary cereal? Back in the day, TV execs looked at live-action hit shows and thought, you know what this needs? Cheaper animation and a talking animal sidekick. Today we're diving into 5 of the most bizarre animated spin-offs that took beloved sitcoms, dramas, and sci-fi classics and turned them into colorful morning chaos that somehow got greenlit. Some were surprisingly good, some were gloriously awful, and one featured a leather jacket wearing time traveler who battled pirates and rode dinosaurs. Now before we jump into this madness, hit like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. Now let's get into the countdown with number 5, The Dukes, spin-off of The Dukes of Hazzard, CBS. The Dukes of Hazzard gave us moonshine-fueled backroad chases, corrupt small-town officials, and 2 good old boys who somehow avoided prison by driving really fast and never meaning no harm. It was pure southern fried chaos. So, naturally, the animated version asked, what if we took all that and replaced it with an international car race, sabotage schemes, and a raccoon named Smokey? In The Dukes, which launched in 1983, the Dukes enter a globe-spanning automobile race to win prize money that'll save the family farm from foreclosure. Boss Hogg, Sheriff Roscoe, and Roscoe's dog Flash join the race too. Their plan is to cheat their way to victory, win the prize money, and snatch up Duke Family Farm in the process. Side note, who sponsored this world race and where were the other drivers? Anyway, I digress. Each episode kicks off with Uncle Jesse reading a letter aloud to his pet raccoon, Smokey, updating him on the latest racing adventures. Because apparently in the early 80s, the target audience for high-speed chase recaps was small woodland creatures. But if the premise wasn't wild enough, here comes the real twist. When the cartoon premiered, Bo and Luke were MIA thanks to a contract dispute. So the cartoon starred their off-brand cousins, Coy and Vance, played by Byron Cherry and Christopher Meyer, aka the backup band no one paid to see. So for one whole season, kids watched animated Coy and Vance race across the globe like they were the real stars of the franchise. Then Tom Wopat and John Schneider patched things up with CBS, so naturally Coy and Vance disappeared at the beginning of season 2, while Bo and Luke magically reappeared. No explanation, no farewell, just a hard swap.
Alright, Roscoe, start moving over towards them.
What's that sneaky old boss hog up to now?
I better ease off on the gas, Mike, till we find out.
The animation was classic Hanna-Barbera. You know, recycled running cycles, gravity-optional jumps, and the General Lee's Dixie horn blasting in every country from France to Fiji because subtlety wasn't exactly in the Duke's toolkit. And if everything looked and sounded a little familiar, well, that's because this was the same studio behind Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones. Recycled sound effects and background art you probably saw in 3 other shows that same morning.
Whatever boss is planned, it didn't work out. Bye!
While The Dukes only lasted 20 episodes across 2 seasons, it delivered everything you'd expect from a Saturday morning adaptation. Slapstick action, outrageous disguises, cartoon logic, and Uncle Jesse's raccoon sidekick, who somehow made more sense than Coy and Vance. At least Smokey didn't get kicked to the curb after 1 season. Number 4, Jeannie, spin-off of I Dream of Jeannie, CBS. I Dream of Jeannie was a charming 1960s sitcom about an astronaut who discovers a beautiful genie in a bottle. Barbara Eden's Jeannie was blonde, sweet, and hopelessly devoted to her master, Tony Nelson, creating romantic tension that kept viewers coming back for 5 seasons. The show ended in 1970 but remained popular in syndication, so Hanna-Barbera decided to launch an animated spin-off in 1973. Unfortunately, they made some, shall we say, interesting creative choices. First, they ditched Barbara Eden and turned Jeannie into a red-headed 16-year-old voiced by Julie McWhirter. because Saturday morning execs decided teenage genies were more marketable than grown women. And instead of Major Nelson, originally played by Larry Hagman, JR from Dallas, mind you, Jeannie's new master was Corey Anders, a teenage surfer from California voiced by Mark Hamill before he became Luke Skywalker. Oh, and fun fact, Mark Hamill actually also sang the theme song.
Hot dogging it up, riding high on a girl. Not thinking about I'd be meeting a girl.
I'll let you decide how that went. Anyway, the show also added Babu, Jeannie's bumbling apprentice genie, voiced by Joe Besser. Yes, one of the Three Stooges. Babu was supposedly learning magic, but his spells backfired so often that he made Orko look like Gandalf.
See, I've been studying the Genie Handbook.
Have you learned anything?
You bet. I've learned how to walk through walls. Watch this. A doody-doo-doo, a doody-doo-dee, yapple-dapple.
Basically, the cartoon changed everything about the original show except the concept of a genie in a bottle. Each episode followed the same basic formula. Corey gets into some teenage predicament. Jeannie tries to help with magic and accidentally makes everything worse, and somehow they all learn a valuable lesson about friendship or honesty or doing the right thing. What made this show different was the complete tonal shift from the original. I Dream of Jeannie had adult themes, workplace comedy, and romantic tension. The cartoon had teenage problems and sanitized feelings. It was like someone took a sophisticated champagne cocktail and turned it into chocolate milk. The animation was classic Hanna-Barbera, which means Jeannie's mouth moved about as much as a ventriloquist dummy's, and every magical transformation was accompanied by the same sparkly sound effect they used in every other cartoon.
You know what I'm gonna do to you?
What is that, Master?
Yikes! Please, Jeannie, I'm gonna... Come back here!
Despite its promise, the animated Jeannie ran for just one season of 16 episodes in the fall of 1973, with reruns continuing through 1975. It never quite captured the charm of its live-action predecessor, maybe because Barbara Eden's charisma doesn't translate to Saturday morning cartoon form, or maybe because replacing an accomplished astronaut with a teenager whose biggest concern is his next surf competition fundamentally misunderstood what made the original work. The show remains a fascinating time capsule of 1970s children television, when networks thought they could slap bright colors and a moral lesson on everything and call it Saturday morning gold. Sometimes they were right. This was not one of those times. Number 3, Star Trek the Animated Series, spin-off of Star Trek, NBC.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
Now, before you start typing angry comments about why Star Trek is on this list, yes, we know it was actually good, but hear us out. Because turning a cerebral sci-fi series into a Saturday morning cartoon, that still sounds like something greenlit during a 3 a.m. network meeting where someone definitely brought out the, let's call them special brownies. After Star Trek was canceled in 1969, fans didn't just move on, they got louder. Letter writing campaigns, conventions, and syndication deals proved that Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future had found its audience. So when NBC decided to revive the franchise in 1973, they had two options: bring back the expensive live-action show or create a Saturday morning cartoon. Guess which one they chose? Because nothing screams logic like an animated Spock wedged between Scooby-Doo and cereal ads. But here's the thing. While most shows on this list got dumber when they became cartoons, Star Trek the Animated Series somehow got smarter and weirder and occasionally more philosophical than its live-action predecessor. Nearly the entire original cast returned to voice their characters. William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, James Doohan, Nichelle Nichols, George Takei, and Majel Barrett all came back to the Enterprise bridge, even if it was now made of limited animation and reused background cells. The notable exception was Walter Koenig's Chekhov, who was cut for budget reasons. However, Koenig would still contribute to the show by writing one of its most acclaimed episodes, The Infinite Vulcan. What made this show special was that animation freed the show from the budgetary constraints that had plagued the original. No more alien planets that were clearly just the same California rock quarry shot through a pink gel filter. The animated format allowed for truly bizarre alien designs and environments that would have bankrupted the original series.
A Vandorian doctor. Their planet is quarantined and few people ever do see them.
Multi-armed navigation officers, cat-like communication specialists, and planets that looked like actual alien worlds instead of repurposed Hollywood backlots. The writing wasn't just good for a cartoon. It was better than half the live-action sci-fi airing in primetime. Dorothy Fontana, who had been associate producer on the original series, served as associate producer and story editor for the cartoon. She brought in serious science fiction writers like Larry Niven, who contributed The Slaver Weapon, adapted from his short story The Soft Weapon from his known space universe. The show tackled themes like environmental protection, the nature of intelligence, and the ethics of time travel. Heavy topics for a Saturday morning cartoon sandwiched between cereal commercials and toy advertisements. Despite the limited animation, and we mean limited, the voice acting was top-notch. Shatner brought the same dramatic intensity to animated Kirk, complete with his distinctive pauses and emphasis. Leonard Nimoy's Spock was particularly effective in animated form.
Captain, did you notice Dr. McCoy's reaction when I asked him if there was any possibility he might have made an error?
He said there's always that possibility, and that's not like Bones at all.
The show won a Daytime Emmy Award in 1975, the first Star Trek property to win an Emmy of any kind. What's remarkable is that the animated series is now considered part of Star Trek canon. Elements from the cartoon have appeared in later Star Trek productions, including James Kirk's middle name, Tiberius. So while other shows on this list are remembered as curious footnotes or bizarre experiments, Star Trek the Animated Series is remembered as a legitimate continuation of one of sci-fi's most important franchises. It proved you don't need fancy effects or massive budgets to boldly go. You just need good writing, a loyal cast, and the guts to animate a cat person on the bridge. Now, if you're enjoying this trip through cartoon chaos, hit that like button and subscribe. Got a favorite animated spin-off? Let us know in the comments section below. Now let's get back to the madness with number 2, The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang, a spin-off of Happy Days, ABC. Happy Days, which ran from 1974 to 1984, was the ultimate nostalgia show. A 1970s sitcom about the 1950s that made the Fonz a cultural icon. Henry Winkler's Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli was the epitome of cool with his iconic catchphrase, "Ay!" and his ability to fix a jukebox with a single smack. So when Hanna-Barbera approached ABC about creating an animated spin-off, they probably should have stopped at the Fonz being cool in cartoon form. But this was 1980 and somebody said, let's give Fonzie and the gang a time machine, a magical 25th century sidekick in go-go boots, and a talking dog. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, see, I got a little problem here. All right, you refugee from the scrap heap. Just cool it.
Well, that's how we got the Fonz and the Happy Days gang. The premise was absolutely bonkers, even by cartoon standards. Fonzie, Richie Cunningham, and Ralph Malph, all voiced by their original actors, made the leap to animation. Potsy didn't make the cut, which, let's be honest, was probably for the best. They teamed up with a magical girl from the 25th century named Cupcake, voiced by Didi Khan. Oh, and did I mention there was an anthropomorphic dog named Mr. Cool? He was voiced by Frank Welker, the GOAT of cartoon voices, which was probably the coolest part of this animated train wreck. Basically, they all quantum leaped their way through history trying to get back to 1957 Milwaukee. One week they were aiding King Arthur, and the next, they were chasing outlaws in the Wild West.
Fonzie, Richie, and Ralph are in trouble.
We're not exactly having a picnic in here, you know.
The time machine had no chill, and neither did the plot. But no matter what century they landed in, Fonzie, of course, maintained his impossibly cool demeanor. The show ran for 24 episodes across 2 seasons, proving that audiences were apparently hungry for time-traveling 1950s nostalgia, mixed with educational content and talking animals. It was like someone put Happy Days, Doctor Who, and Scooby-Doo in a blender and hit the chaos setting. The show's legacy lives on as one of the most surreal footnotes in TV history. Proof that, in the right era, You could drop any sitcom character into any half-baked cartoon premise, and someone would still tune in, especially if it involved a leather jacket, a time machine, and a dog named Mr. Cool. Number 1, Laverne and Shirley in the Army, spin-off of Laverne and Shirley, ABC.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Hassenwerf Incorporated.
If you've ever watched Laverne and Shirley and thought, this is great, but what if they fought Nazis? Well, first of all, what? Second of all, congratulations. You may have worked at Hanna-Barbera in the early 80s. The original series ran for 8 seasons on ABC from 1976 to 1983. A spin-off of Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley starred Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams as best friends who capped bottles at the fictional Schatz Brewery in late 50s Milwaukee. The cartoon, which launched in 1981, dropped them straight into a World War II cartoon where they joined the Women's Army Corps. Because nothing says logical spin-off like sending sitcom characters back in time to join the army. Laverne and Shirley were voiced by Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams, reprising their roles with all the charm you'd expect, while shouting orders, doing push-ups, and trying not to get court-martialed for turning the barracks into a roller disco. In Season 2, Cindy Williams was replaced by Lynn Marie Stewart since Williams left the original series following a contract dispute. Their constant foil was Sergeant Squealy, a literal pig in military uniform who doubled as their commanding officer and snitch. He was voiced by Ron Palillo, best known as Arnold Horshack from Welcome Back, Kotter.
Sergeant Turnbuckle sent me out here to inspect the troops. Tisk, tisk.
You could definitely hear a little Horshack there, and why was no one concerned that Sergeant Squealy never wore pants? The tone was somewhere between Private Benjamin and Looney Tunes if Looney Tunes had a laugh track and more marching drills. Each episode revolved around the girls getting into military mischief, accidentally destroying government property, narrowly avoiding a dishonorable discharge, and Squealy threatening to report them to Sergeant Turnbuckle. Oh, and remember when they accidentally stole a government rocket and got captured by aliens?
We're taking off! Gee, Sergeant Turnbuckle really isn't gonna like this. We've got a radio for help!
Those were the typical shenanigans they got into. The show ran for just one season in 1981 to 1982 under its original name, but it was memorable enough that ABC tried to revive it in Season 2 by literally adding the Fonz. Yeah, when ratings dipped, they rebranded the show as Laverne and Shirley with the Fonz, because apparently the solution to every problem in 1980s animation was just throw Fonzie in there. He time-traveled in his own cartoon, sure, but here, Fonzie just kinda showed up as the chief mechanic on a military base in the 1950s like it was totally normal. No time machine, no explanation, just Fonzie and his talking dog Mr. Cool suddenly enlisted alongside 2 Brooklyn girls and a tattletale pig. Only 8 episodes of the renamed series were produced before it was cancelled. Laverne and Shirley in the Army is a perfect example of what happened when cartoon spin-offs stopped even pretending to care about canon, character arcs, or basic chronology. It was weird, deeply unnecessary, and somehow still charming in that Saturday morning cartoon marathon kind of way. It was a time when we really didn't care what was on as long as it had familiar characters and enough sound effects that went boing. And there you have it, 5 cartoon spin-offs that proved the 70s and early 80s were a magical time when any hit show could be turned into a Saturday morning adventure, regardless of logic, physics, or basic storytelling rules. Which of these animated spin-offs did you watch, either back in the day or in reruns? Drop it in the comments section below, and if you enjoyed this trip through TV's animated archives, give us a like and hit subscribe for more forgotten gems and bizarre deep dives every week. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a blast from the past, and until next time, this is Remember When.